Hi, my name is Monica, and I'm 19 years old. My parents always told me that if I ever deceived or hurt someone, karma would catch up with me for it. I never believed them. However, not so long ago, something happened that made me think that they might have been right. Subscribe to the channel, and I will tell you the story of one lie. I was in college and lived on campus. It was a completely carefree time in my life. I didn't worry about my studies much and mostly went to college to hang out and gossip with my friends. For example, about our new teacher, Mr. Chandler. He was a young graduate student who had just finished university and got a job as a philosophy teacher. He was only 5 years older than us. He was also really handsome. I liked him right away, but I didn't know how to hit on him. And then one day, our normal life came to an abrupt end. Our college was closed for quarantine and all of the students had to switch to studying online. I was living with my roommate, Ursula. She was as bummed out as I was about our loss of freedom. Ursula was a year older than me and we were best friends. We spent days participating in Zoom conferences and staring at our laptop screens. Our teachers were giving us boring lectures and dozens of students were watching them from their rooms. However, sometimes some students would forget to turn off the camera on their laptop, and hilarity would ensue. For example, one day our classmate had not turned off the camera, stood up and stretched. Everyone saw that he wasn't wearing any pants. He thought that no one could see him and started dancing in his room. We were dying laughing watching him. That's when I came up with an idea. I was so bored, I decided to prank my classmates. I needed the help of my roommate for it to work. I told her my plan and she agreed to take part in it. The next day, when the online lesson had ended and everyone had said goodbye to each other, I pretended to forget about my camera. I stood up from the table and went about my business. Suddenly, Ursula appeared in the room. She started yelling at me for having eaten her pizza. I snapped back at her for having taken my makeup without permission. We started arguing louder and louder. In the end, Ursula said that I was the worst roommate ever and she didn't want to live with me anymore. She packed up her things, slammed the door, and walked away, and I burst into tears, trying to look hurt. Obviously, it had all been for show. I knew that dozens of students were watching us at that moment, and I gave it my all. And I'd stopped sobbing. I sat back down in front of my laptop and pretended I'd only just noticed my camera was still working. I faked getting scared and quickly turned it off. Ursula came back into the room, and we laughed together, imagining the surprised faces of those who had been watching us. However, what happened next surprised me. The next day, my classmates started sending me messages with words of support and sympathy. They genuinely felt sorry for me and wanted to help. And in the evening, some of them even came to my campus, gave me a nice present, and said everything would be fine. To be honest, I thought everyone would realize our fight had been a prank and laugh at us. But that's not what happened at all. Everyone had bought it. Even my crush, Mr. Chandler, believed it had been real and wrote to me to cheer me up. That's when I decided to take advantage of their gullibility some more. I came up with a plan to impress my teacher. Just a few days later, after our online lessons had ended, I pretended to forget about the camera once again. Then I faked calling someone and started telling them what a great teacher we had and how much I liked him. I tried to look as in love as possible. I knew he was watching me. Then, just like last time, I pretended to notice the camera had not been turned off, tried to look embarrassed, and closed Zoom. I immediately wrote Mr. Chandler apologizing. He, of course, was very flattered by such attention and replied that nothing terrible had happened. We kept writing to each other and after a while started dating. I'd got what I wanted. Mr. Chandler was mine now, and it was all thanks to my cunning and his gullibility. However, when my roommate found out about it, for some reason she said that what I was doing was no longer okay. Pranking classmates for some harmless fun was one thing, but deceiving people and manipulating them was quite another. Ursula turned out to be so boring, so I just brushed her words off and sat down at my laptop to play an online game. That went on for some time and finally a miracle happened. The quarantine came to an end. We started going to college again and everything went back to normal. I would rush to class in the mornings to hang out and gossip with my friends once more. Only now, Mr. Chandler was waiting for me there as well. Yes, I was dating my teacher, but we kept it a secret so that the college wouldn't kick us both out. At first, everything was going fine, But then I realized that I'd been too hasty in declaring my love for Mr. Chandler. He turned out to be a terrible bore, and a mama's boy on top of that. I was growing tired of his constant grudges and tantrums. At some point, I realized that I did not want to date him anymore and began to avoid him. But I couldn't just tell him everything straight out. Knowing how vindictive he was, I was sure that he would fail me in the exams. But luckily for me, a few days later, an unfortunate accident happened to him. He fell off his bike and broke his leg. He was fine, but they put him in a cast and he had to stay at home. All of my classmates sympathized with him and I breathed a sigh of relief. I wouldn't have to see him at least for a little while. I spent my free time playing games online. During the quarantine, I had got really good at Fortnite, Warcraft, and Overwatch. Oh, if only I got paid for that. I thought of Mr. Chandler and his cast and came up with a brilliant idea. I quickly got a cast for my arm from some friends and set up a streaming channel. Well, have you realized what my plan was yet? I streamed my favorite games, and when the audience asked what was wrong with my arm, I replied in a sad voice that I had fallen off a bicycle. Everyone immediately began to feel sorry for me and wrote how great such a beautiful girl was at gaming, with a broken arm no less. They were also eager to support me with donations. Money began to roll in. Each stream got me quite a lot of it, and I felt very pleased with myself. One day, Ursula saw me with the cast on my arm and asked in a scared voice what had happened to me. I laughed merrily and removed the cast. I told my friend about my cunning plan, but she was not supportive at all. More than that, she got angry and said I was sick in the head. "You can't mess around like that. Karma will catch up with you," cried Ursula. She really pissed me off at that moment. I started yelling back at her, saying that it was none of her business and that if she envied me, she should do that silently. We argued for a long time until finally, my roommate said that she didn't want to live with me anymore and was moving to another campus. I said I was glad. Of course, I was a little worried about my fight with Ursula, but calmed down very quickly. However, from that moment on, luck really seemed to turn away from me. No sooner had my friend moved into another room than the college closed for quarantine again. Except now, I had absolutely no one to chat with. I sat alone for days on end, bored out of my mind. If Ursula had been with me, I wouldn't have been so lonely. I remember how we'd had a fake fight on camera not that long ago, and now she moved out for real. It was a pretty strange coincidence. And then something unexpected happened. I was listening to Mr. Chandler's online class and yawning, bored out of my mind. I'd fallen out of love with him and couldn't bear to even listen to him anymore. Finally, the lesson came to an end, and I felt immensely relieved. "I'm so sick of you, Chandler. If I'd had known what a jerk you were, I never would have said I liked you in my life," I said angrily out loud. Suddenly, I saw a message on the screen from one of my classmates. "Monica, you're still online. We can all hear you." I turned pale with horror. The camera on my laptop had been working the whole time. I hadn't turned it off, and Mr. Chandler had heard it all. I got scared and slammed my laptop shut at once. How had that happened? I used to do it on purpose, and now I'd fallen for my own trick. I remembered Ursula's words. Karma will catch up with you. Had she been right all along? And most importantly, what was going to happen now? How would my teacher react to my harsh words? The very next day, I found out the answer to that. Mr. Chandler was very strict with me. I immediately got a bad feeling, and I was right. He started to ask me ridiculously difficult questions, and of course I couldn't answer them. So at the end of the lesson, he gave me the lowest mark. I realized that he was going to get revenge on me for how I'd humiliated him, and I would definitely fail the philosophy exam. I thought of how I'd pretended to forget to turn off the camera when I wanted him to like me, and now the very same camera had put an unpleasant end to our relationship. More and more weird coincidences were happening. I felt really scared. To distract myself from such unpleasant thoughts, I decided to stream a bit. So as usual, I put the cast on my arm and sat down to play. On that day, I was very lucky and got enough donations to buy a brand new laptop. I was so happy that I thanked all of my viewers before ending the stream. Relieved, I removed the cast. My arm was itching horribly under it. And then a scary thought crept into my head. What if I hadn't turned off the camera on my laptop? I looked at the screen and almost fell off my chair. The camera was still working, and my audience had seen that my arm was all right. Immediately, the chat filled with angry messages. My viewers were writing that I was a liar and suggested to dislike my stream until I got banned. I closed my laptop and tossed it under the bed. I felt very scared. I called my former roommate at once and asked her to come back to me, but Ursula sounded very peeved and told me to sort out my problems on my own. I sat in my room, too afraid to go out. What if something else happened to punish me for my lies? I've regretted how I treated Mr. Chandler, Ursula, my classmates, and viewers 1,000 times over. But how do I fix it now? Write your ideas in the comments down below because I'm really very scared.